Hey, vinyl community. The video you're going to see, and if you've clicked on this video, thank you very much. I appreciate it. This video is very much a labor of love, as opposed to my vinyl find videos, which are kind of more for mass consumption. They have a broader appeal. But these videos that I do like these, they're a labor of love, and I don't expect anyone to watch them. But if you do, thank you very much. It does mean a lot to me. So cheers, everyone. Really quickly, what this video is, if you've not read the description, and I'm sure you have, these are records that I feel are very underrepresented in the vinyl community. They could be albums that were big at one point, and they've kind of drifted by the wayside. They're albums that maybe they were never big at all, that I feel deserve mention or reinvestigation. Records that if you were to read critics' reviews, whether they be retrospective reviews or original reviews, they would lead you to believe that they were a band's lesser work, or not their best album, or not their best work. And some of those albums are records that I'm prepared to go fight for and die on the hill for, so to speak, which you'll see coming up. So that's pretty much what this video is. They're just records that I feel that deserve their due. Records that I feel very passionate about. Nothing I'm going to show you in this video, or depending how this one goes, any future video like this, none of them would be an album that I don't have an intense love for in one way or another. And when we get to these albums, I'll explain why. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this already, but this video has been in the works more or less since I started doing YouTube videos. It was one of the first videos I really wanted to do, and I was just having trouble compiling it. And I figured out my problem was I was trying to write them down, whether it be on a keyboard on a computer or whether it be pen to paper. And it actually took me going through my records, and not to sound all new age and hippie, but when you flip through your records, a lot of those records kind of they didn't speak to you literally, because that'd be crazy. But you know what I mean. When you flip those records, they kind of spoke to you, and they presented themselves. And when you hit a certain record, when you flip through them, 100 memories come to mind. And then and that's one of those albums that would fit this video or this video. So yeah, that was the hang up I was having, and it actually took me to go through all my records, whether I was pulling records for this video or a different video. Having said that, so this has been in the works for a long time, and this is just a small sampling of the records that I pulled or I could have showed anyways. So once again, I just wanted to kind of get that out of the way. So once again, records that I feel, and if one person, because really it doesn't really matter to me how many views this video gets, but if one person investigates one album I've shown and they end up liking it, then I feel this is worth it. So that's what these videos are. We're going to get right to it. An album that I have talked about a couple times recently, but not in depth. There's a band called Zeppelin, and I'm going to show you, this is their first record called Unleaded, 1990. And I've not done, by the way, even though I love these albums, I know them inside and out, some of the small details I may flub on, so I'm sure you'll let me know. You all love doing that when I make mistakes. Anyways, I've not, like I said, I've not rehearsed any of this, but I'm going to blow through these. If I make the odd mistake, I do apologize. Once again, it wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't pause and have a total aside. But Zeppelin, if you have not heard me talk about them briefly in prior videos, they are ostensibly or primarily a band who does Led Zeppelin covers in a reggae style, with a lead singer who is a very large in size Elvis impersonator. So you got three really crazy influences, and it's not full on reggae music. There's a lot of hard guitars on it and stuff like that. It's a mishmash of, it really is a mishmash of Zeppelin, reggae, and Elvis, and it's fantastic. And on paper, that would look like a goddamn mess, but in practice, it works, and it works brilliantly on their first two records. This one in particular, Zeppelin, their first album, Unleaded. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. if you want to investigate a certain song, go on YouTube or stream the song Heartbreaker at the End of Lonely Street, and that will give you an example of what I'm talking about for Dread Zeppelin. So, first album I want to show you, Dread Zeppelin. Ooh, this album. It was the last album this band did before they broke up, and it didn't lead to the breakup, or the reception to the album didn't cause the breakup. The band had kind of petered out by that time. But it came out hot on the heels of their biggest album they ever had. And this is one of those albums, if you were to believe critics, they would have you believe it's the band's worst album. And I'm going to fight for this one, and I'm going to die on that hill for this album. It's The Cars, Door to Door. This one was self-produced by Rick Ocasek, and it came out after Heartbeat City, which sold gajillions of records and was a massive success. And what they did, Robert Mutt Lange produced that album, and if you know him, he's a very meticulous worker. And what they wanted to do was break away from that and do a back to basics kind of a rock album. And that's what they did. Unfortunately, the first single, You Are the Girl, is unlike anything else on the record, where it's very light and fluffy, and was definitely written and recorded to have a radio hit. And that song is not representational of the album. It is an incredible, hard-rocking Cars album, and I can't talk about this album enough. Later on, they reformed not that long ago, and they did a really great album called Move Like This, or Move to This. Anyways, that was a great album too. But this was their last kind of album with the original lineup, including Benjamin Orr, who passed away. If you want to listen to some songs, listen to Strap Me In, listen to the song Door to Door, listen to the song Double Trouble. It's a hard driving album, and I think that first single, although it did well in the singles charts, it kind of sank the album. And if you're old enough to remember, you'll remember that we saw this album was in discount bins for years after it came out, because record stores ordered it like it was going to be another Heartbeat City, and it just wasn't. It did respectable enough. Anyways, The Cars, Door to Door. I'm going to fight for this album until the day I die. As one of it's apart from their first album, which is pretty much flawless. I'm going to say this is up there with one of their best albums, in my opinion. All right. We're going to talk about a band called Lushness Jackson. This is not the album I'm going to show you, but this is their album Natural Ingredients, which I believe was their second album, and they had a hit on the Clueless soundtrack, and that's the point that they kind of got pigeonholed into a certain, or they kind of got backed into a corner as a certain kind of band. And although they had success with that lineup, ultimately, their first album is the album I'm going to show you, called In Search of Manny. Lushness Jackson were on Grand Royal Records, which was owned and operated by the Beastie Boys. And this is not like their second album or their later work. This is a very gritty, it sounds like New York City. It's beats, and it's funk, and it's soul, and it's got some just dirty female pseudo rap, some singing, and it's just a great album. I absolutely love this album, and it's one of those albums where I saw the video for the first single, I actually did go to the store the next time I had money, and I ran and bought this album. And the first single I'm talking about, if you want to sample a song, is called Daughters of the Chaos. If you want to go on YouTube or wherever and listen to that song. And then if that interests you, listen to the first song, Let Yourself Get Down. And if that interests you further, then find a copy of this album. The first Lushness Jackson album, called In Search of Manny. All right. I want to talk about a band. I've mentioned this before, but you see a Knack poster behind you. I am a big fan of power pop, pop music with a hard edge to it, which like the Knack were. And by the way, as another aside, my Achilles heel, which is also, I think, my strongest point, musically speaking, or collecting, is I like everything. I'm so all over the map. So how that plays into this. If you're seeing stuff you don't like, just hang on. You're bound to see stuff you're going to like. But it's this what I'm going to show you kind of is all over the place. And the only thing I'm not doing, I should have said this off the top, I've chosen not to do prog and psych because I feel there's enough of those kind of videos on YouTube like this where they'll be of much more benefit than I could ever be. So I'm not doing anything prog or psych. So having said that, let's talk about the Kings. And I was talking about power pop. The Kings are best known for one single and one single only called This Beat Goes On / Switch in the Glide. In Canada, you could probably hear this once an hour, every hour on any radio station across Canada. It's still that big of a song. In fact, the band released a DVD a couple years ago, which I think they've now released that on YouTube. It's called Anatomy of a One-Hit Wonder, which is a great DVD, or now it's available for free on YouTube. But it's basically them talking about the one-hit single. Unfortunately, if you're a fan, you'll know that they're a hell of a lot more than a one-hit wonder, as evidenced by their first album, The Kings Are Here. Of course, the album starts off with that song, but they really honed their craft for years before this album came out in the sweaty bars of Toronto and Ontario, and they really got their act together. And this album is produced by Bob Ezrin, he of Pink Floyd fame and Kiss and a lot of other, Alice Cooper. So they had an ace producer, and this album is as tight as power pop will ever get. Just an amazing album. If you want to sample a song, apart from This Beat Goes On, Switch in the Glide, which is the song everyone kind of knows, listen to a song called Love Store. It's a bad title, but a great song. This whole album is rock solid. The Kings Are Here, an album I feel definitely needs an investigation, a reinvestigation by people apart from that one song. This album, of late, I've been hearing this. There's one single off this album that was very big at the time, and lately I've been hearing this everywhere in every store I go to in a mall. So I'm guessing every store in malls have the same canned music playing through their speakers, because the song No Myth I've heard, I can't tell you how many times in the last few months, but it's an artist called Michael Penn, and this is his first album called March. And March was nominated for a Grammy, oddly enough. He is obviously Sean Penn's brother, but don't hold that against him. He is his own man, his own art. He does his own thing. Michael Penn has released some of the greatest albums no one knows about. He has consistently released brilliant music. And if you've seen the movie Boogie Nights, he's the engineer in those recording sessions that Dirk Diggler and those guys did. Yeah, so he's the engineer in that. But this is his first album called March. And the whole album is absolutely fantastic. And if you want to investigate something further other than the song No Myth, which was the big song, you can listen to the song This and That, which was, I believe, sorry, I got a dog here floating everywhere here. My damn dogs. Sorry, that was kind of uncalled for. The song This and That. In fact, I still have all my original cassette singles from this album, but This and That was the second single off this album. And all of his albums are just fantastic, but his first album was the first album I ever heard from him, and the one that kind of I hold closest to me. So Michael Penn, March. If I'm being a little bit scant with details, I want to get through all these albums, and I have a feeling I won't. We're going to talk about Sinead OConnor. Yes, everyone knows this album. I'm including Sinead OConnor because I feel that she's been kind of, she's now that crazy girl with mental health issues, and that's kind of what people know her for. She finally got over that Pope thing, and now people call her the crazy girl. And unfortunately, she has mental health issues, and that's why people talk about her nowadays, is her crazy posts she does online. And unfortunately, her first album is absolutely brilliant, and I'm trying to bring it back around to she's a brilliant artist. And in fact, in high school, this was the girl I had posters of in my locker. Oddly enough, that might speak volumes about me. But just a rock solid album, her debut album, The Lion and the Cobra. And like I said, I'm showing this to remind people how brilliant she is as a singer and an artist. And unfortunately, she's saddled with that tag of hers recently, and it does bother me a little bit, just because she gets really ignored now, sadly. And I find that very unfortunate. In fact, she's had some great albums in the last 10 years. The fans have bought, but they've not got their due because of her reputation, sadly. But Sinead OConnor, The Lion and the Cobra. I'm going to go on record and tell you this is one of the greatest hard-rocking power pop albums ever. And they are primarily known for one song outside of Canada. They're known for the song I'm an Adult Now. So we all know, if you're Canadian, this band. Maybe you might know them in the States. It's a band called The Pursuit of Happiness. This is their first album called Love Junk. And Love Junk was produced by Todd Rundgren. So already you know it's going to be power pop masterpiece. And it is. I can't even recommend one song from this album because the whole thing is absolutely rock solid top to bottom. You cannot get a better hard rocking power pop album if you tried. Everything is kind of all done by Mr. Moberg, who's actually from my city. He had a bunch of bands here, and then he, which I have all of his older bands on vinyl, local independent releases. Then he went to Toronto and formed this band, and this is back when a band could record an indie video for a couple $100, give it to a video channel. They would add it into heavy rotation, and then they got signed. And that's what happened to them. They made a little independent video for I'm an Adult Now. On a lark, gave it to our video channel in Canada. They added it into heavy rotation. They got signed. Then you got Todd Rundgren involved. You got Ed Stasium involved. You had major labels involved. And they did a string of about 3 or 4 just tremendous albums. But Love Junk, their first album, I promise you, if you like power pop, you gotta listen to it. That album, like Sinead OConnor, sorry, I'm going to keep tabs on time here. I don't want to go too long. But like Sinead OConnor, this band kind of got sidetracked a bit by the lead singer. She became a pinup girl, and more people focused on her looks rather than the music the band did, unfortunately. And they were huge in the UK, and they had a modicum of success everywhere else. But it's a band called Transvision Vamp. This is the girl, Wendy James. And unfortunately, she became the poster girl, or a pinup girl for a lot of guys. And I think their music got marginalized slightly. But this album, in particular, had a ton of hit singles in the UK. But it is a brilliant album all the way through. Like I said, you have to listen. A lot of people might know this album, so it's not like it's something that's unknown. But it's one of those albums I desperately think needs reinvestigation as a standalone album, regardless of what the lead singer looks like. But if you want to sample a song other than one of the hit singles they had, listen to the song, the title track, Velveteen. It's a long, epic song. It's a great song. And Pay the Ghost is a great non-single, or just a deep album cut. But might have been 5 or 6 singles off this album. And I think it went #1 in the UK, actually. But unfortunately, it's been it's been slightly forgotten about. But it holds up as, in my estimation, just a brilliant, brilliant, hard-rocking pop album. It's hard-rocking in places, but they did have some pop sensibility on this album. Anyways, Transvision Vamp, Velveteen. We're going to go into one more kind of album of this kind of genre, then we're kind of move on. My records are filed by genre. So when I pull records, they kind of get bunched into genres. But the last album I'm going to talk about of this genre that I think is a band called Gene Loves Jezebel. This is their album, Kiss of Life. And you may know them for their song Desire, which was a big hit in the clubs, and it did fairly well in the singles chart. But they were twin brothers, Jay and Michael Aston. And before this record came out, they got into a huge squabble and they separated. And Michael went on his own. And Jay kept the name and he made this he kept the band, kicked his brother out. And they made this fantastic album called Kiss of Life. In fact, it had an MTV video hit on here called Jealous, which was kind of like a cock rock song. And that was a big hit on MTV. But it's not representational of the album once again. Just a brilliant, brilliant album. I can't say much more about this album. It's, what was this, 1990, I believe this came out on Beggar's Banquet. But I can't express how much love I have for this album to you. A lot of these albums, I find it hard to convey how I feel about some of these albums. It's kind of like, it's hard to put, how music affects you. It's hard to kind of sometimes convey it without trying to be all smarmy and smart about it and sound intelligible or intelligent. But sometimes a feeling that an album gives you, it is what it is, and you can't really explain it. And that's kind of like with this album. I can't explain why. It just resonated with me in a big, big way. If I want to sample a song, other than Jealous was the big hit. But it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of a cock rock song. But the album itself is kind of a little bit more like their older stuff, where it's kind of a gothy alternative sound with hard rock and guitars. Don't be turned off by that, though, please. Listen to the song Why Can't I, or the title track Kiss of Life. I just love this album, and that's all I'm going to say about it, because now I'm going to start babbling and trying to convey my emotions to you about music. We're going to go into some hard rock stuff. And I'm going to run out of time, I think, and I might have to break this up into videos. So I tell you what, because I got electronica pulled, I got hard rock, I got all kinds of stuff pulled. But if you like this video, you want to see more, let me know, because I'd be happy to make more videos like this of albums I would love people to reinvestigate. But we're going to talk about Badlands. Badlands was about, 1989, 1990, around that period. It came out in the hair metal era. But it's not a hair metal album per se. It's very much more like a bluesy, hard rock metal album. And you got J.K. Lee, who was in Ozzy Osbourne's band. And you got Eric Singer, who was in the Alice Cooper band. And he was in Lita Ford's band, not in that order. Then he was in Kiss. Then he went on he was in Badlands. And the incredible Ray Gillen on vocals, who sadly passed away a while ago. Possibly one of the best top 5 albums to come out of that hair metal genre. And it's definitely not a hair metal album. You listen to this and you're not going to hear elements of Poison or Warrant. It's its own thing, very bluesy, hard rock. Badlands. I'm going to do 2 more. Good for bad, however long this video goes. This is one of those albums I can't explain why I intensely love this album. And I could make an hour-long video with all the variants I have of this album and promo singles. And it's a concept album. A concept that this came out in about 1988. And I've been listening to this album. I probably listen to this album once every couple of weeks since 1988. And that's no lie. It's a concept album by a band called Blue Oyster Cult. And it's called Imaginos. This is the UK blue vinyl, limited blue vinyl. But I have many variants of this album. It's a concept album. I do remember one line from an original review I read of this album in Rolling Stone magazine, where it said, "This is the Blue Oyster Cult album all the fans hoped they would make." It's the hardest rocking Blue Oyster Cult album there is to this day. They had what was called the Guitar Orchestra of Imaginos playing this album. So it was a revolving cast of guitar players on top of Buck Dharma and Eric Bloom. And of course, as well as I know this album, I'm brain farting on its guests, on the guest musicians, but you can Google it. But it's a concept album, and ever since and to this day, I don't understand it. It's Blue Oyster Cult were always a very intelligent band, but to this day, I don't fully understand. If you go on the internet, there's websites devoted to the story of it. But basically, what it is, and here's what happened to it: the record company got the album. And they re-sequenced the album to fit more of a format that they thought would sell better. But by doing that, they took the story out of order. So you can't really understand the story. Apart from Imaginos is a person who has the ability to time travel through time and place himself at pivotal points in our lifetime or other lifetimes. He could be in 1782 and he could be today. He just has the ability to place himself at pivotal events. Apart from that, I don't understand the rest of it. But I love the album. And like I said, as it is a concept album, you'd have to listen to the whole thing. But Blue Oyster Cult, Imaginos, to me, their best album their hardest rocking album, and an album that just, you know, there are a lot of fans of this album, as there's websites devoted to it. It doesn't get enough play. It doesn't get talked about nearly enough, or at all, for that matter. One more drink and we're going to hit one more album. And sadly, I have about another 10 pulled for this video that I'm not going to get to. But like I said, lots more to come. Like I said, please let me know. I wouldn't want to waste anyone's time if, you know, if this video is of no use to anyone. We're going to end with the Ramones. And this is an album, this was their second last album. It's called Mondo Bizarro. And let me tell you about this album. This came out in the glory time of grunge, when everyone was name-checking the Ramones. You had Kurt Cobain, Eddie Vedder, Chris Cornell. Every major grunge artist at their peak was name-checking the Ramones. And they were poised to make this big, great breakthrough album that they thought they were going to finally break through for the first time ever, because everyone's talking about them. And they left their record label Sire, and they signed to a new label called Radioactive that was started by their manager. And they had major label distribution through MCA, and they spent a lot of money promoting this album. And their first single was a very commercial heavy song, which, yeah, we'll get to that. And the album didn't do much. And then they decided to break up. So they made one last album called Adios Amigos, and that was it. And then slowly they all passed away, sadly. But I had to show you Mondo Bizarro. They put their heart and soul into making their great, what they thought would be their great breakthrough album. And it's the album that could have been, that never was. Like I said, their first single was Poison Heart. And like I said, that was Joey Ramone trying to write his best radio hit. And it just wasn't, sadly. And, you know, there's one kind of cliche, you know, song about censorship called Censorship. But primarily, it's just a stacked album. And it doesn't get a lot of love because it's not the classic era Ramones, and it's not cool to talk about later Ramones. But Mondo Bizarro, if you listen to songs like Anxiety and Strength to Endure and Tomorrow She Goes Away and Cabbies on Crack, it's just as hard hitting as their older stuff. It's just kind of modernized. It's well recorded and it's, you know, well played. But this was, I remember when this came out, how excited I was. And I just, to this day, I still love this album. I think it sits nicely amongst their earlier catalog, in my opinion. So, you know, there's a couple filler songs that were kind of aimed at the commercial market, but they were trying. They were going for broke. And unfortunately, it broke up the band. So, we're going to stop there. I have, like I said, another pile of albums. If you'd like to see me do another video, let me know. That'd be nice. And if no one watches this video, you know what? I just really wanted to make this video. And if one person saw something that they investigate, like I said, and they like, it's all worth it to me. So, if you did choose to watch this video, it means a lot to me, as these labors of love. When I do these, if anyone watches, I'm happy with it. They're kind of standalone videos to my Vinyl Fan videos, which everyone loves. So I want to say thank you very, very much if you've made it through this video. And anyone, if you've made the effort to sample one of these albums, even if you don't like it, you could think I'm full of shit. But if you've investigated it, that's cool. It means a lot to me. Anyways. You know what? And also, if you want to leave a comment below, if you've made it this far, of albums that you feel might fit this mold or fit what we're, you know, the general idea of what we're talking about, let me know. Let me know of an album that you think doesn't get enough play. These are albums that you intensely have to love. You have to love these albums because, you know, it's easy enough to name check, you know, some obscure Pink Floyd thing, or well, not there's any obscure Pink Floyd things, but you know what I mean. It's easy to name check some album that, you know, an obscure album that, you know, but I'm talking about albums you just love. good for bad. They could be embarrassed. They could be in sync albums. I don't know. Just let me know. I would, if I haven't heard it, I'd love to go listen to it. This is a two-way dialogue, I feel. We're going to end it there before I babble on too long. I'm full of coffee. I just finished 9 hours of work, so I've got a little bit of pep to me. Anyways, this has been David Michael. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time.